It was supposed to be another safe, scripted morning on ESPN, another polished debate, another predictable segment where hot takes were arranged neatly like props on a stage. But the moment Dan called Arch Manning generational, the oxygen in the studio evaporated. The smiles faded. The camera seemed to lean in, sensing something shifting in the room. And Ryan Clark, measured, composed, with that unmistakable sparkle of righteous fire in his eyes, became the man who would not just counter a take, but rip into the very architecture of the sports media machine, live, raw, and unfiltered. What started as harmless analysis spiraled into a reckoning. Clark had been in too many locker rooms, survived too many battles, and watched too many overlooked athletes claw their way toward respect to let the conversation slip into a fantasy built on pedigree and public relations. When doubled down meaning on numbers, family bloodlines, GPS speed, and inherited expectations, Clark didn't flinch. He didn't need to, because he wasn't debating Arch Manning. He was dissecting a culture that crowns to kings before they've earned a kingdom, that worships legacy while ignoring the warriors who build themselves from the dirt. He leaned forward, voice steady but loaded with weight, and said the word generational like it tasted wrong. And the studio knew instantly. This wasn't a debate anymore. This was an intervention. Clark challenged every assumption that had become gospel in modern sports coverage. He questioned why some names are protected from criticism while others must bleed to be seen. He exposed the way analysts fall in love with possibilities instead of realities, with surnames instead of substance. And when trying to defend his stance, compared Arch Manning to Lamar Jackson, the entire room froze because they knew Clark wasn't going to let that slip by. Clark leaned in slowly, the way a fighter sizes up his opponent before throwing the decisive punch, but he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need theatrics. He used precision instead. Lamar Jackson wasn't chosen by media hype or family legacy. He forced the world to respect him with performances that shook stadiums and rewrote expectations. And that's when Clark shifted the conversation toward the quarterback who embodied everything Lamar once fought for, Sanders. Not because was a media darling or a legacy kid coasting on his father's name, but because he built himself through adversity, pressure, and raw production that demanded respect. Clark broke down the difference between hype and truth with surgical clarity. Hype is projected. Truth is earned. Pedigree is decoration. Production is identity. And unlike many of the prospects being crowned from the studio desk, had earned every ounce of what was being denied to him through battles that didn't take place in TV arguments, but on fields where cold air stung lungs, crowds roared, and every mistake was a public execution. Clark talked about quarterbacks who weren't raised in the glow of national broadcasts, who weren't gifted opportunities, who didn't walk into programs already tailored to make them stars. Quarterbacks who had to survive skepticism, navigate underfunded facilities, weather media assaults, and still rise. And in that moment, without saying it explicitly, Clark made it impossible to ignore that Sanders was one of those quarterbacks. Wasn't the product of hype. He was the product of hunger. While analysts were busy manufacturing narratives, he was busy proving them irrelevant. And Clark wasn't finished. When he delivered his now iconic line about vest, the entire internet erupted not because of the joke itself, but because of what it symbolized. The vest became a metaphor for everything wrong with modern sports commentary. The polished surface covering hollow analysis, the flashy presentation hiding shallow thinking, the stylish veneer masking the absence of lived experience. The vest became the shield analysts used to defend their takes, even when those takes ignore the reality unfolding on the field. The clip went viral not because it was funny, but because it struck a nerve. Fans were tired of narratives being sold to them like products. They were tired of watching privileged prospects elevated while self-made players were pushed aside. They were tired of hearing experts build careers on projections instead of accountability. And as social media exploded with memes, breakdowns, and reactions, a deeper truth rang through the chaos. Clark had said what millions wanted to say, but never had the platform to. He didn't just challenge argument, he challenged every analyst, every network, every system built on reputation instead of results. And slowly through the noise and the viral frenzy, a quieter question emerged, a question the entire segment had been circling around without naming directly. If generational talent is supposed to be earned, then why is Sanders still fighting for acknowledgement while others are handed crowns? Because Journey didn't fit the romanticized narrative. He didn't rise through glamorous programs or legacy pipelines. He climbed through pressure cooker environments, behind struggling offensive lines, inside systems built to expose flaws, not hide them. He was forged in adversity, polished through scrutiny, sharpened through necessity. And every time the lights brightened, every time games tightened, he didn't crack, he elevated. That's what generational looks like, not potential. Not birthright. Performance, grace under fire, consistency under chaos, leadership when the world expects collapse. And that, Clark argued without directly naming him, is what the sports media machine refuses to understand. By the end of the segment, the debate had transformed into a full examination of fairness and authenticity. Clark restored perspective, reminding viewers that greatness is not a prediction, it is a pattern. It is not crowned by analysts, it is proven by athletes. And while everyone else was busy arguing about the future of Arch Manning, the present reality was already undeniable. Sanders was quietly outgrowing the shadow of every hype prospect being placed above him. He didn't need TV validation. He didn't need media campaigns. He didn't need analysts to defend him. His tape was his truth. His performance was his passport. His resilience was his signature. And while the studio lights dimmed and the segment ended, one truth remained suspended in the air like electricity. The sports media world was busy debating chosen names while the future was already being shaped by someone who didn't ask for the spotlight because he was too busy earning it. And that is the irony at the heart of the controversy, while analysts crowned their favorites. The quarterback with the least hype was becoming the most undeniable, because greatness doesn't need permission. It doesn't wait for validation. It doesn't care about last names or legacy or whether the media believes in you. It breaks through on its own terms. And Sanders' calm, relentless, unbothered, and dangerously focused is already breaking through, one silent, unavoidable moment at a time. What the world misunderstands about is the part that actually defines him. He has never needed the noise. He has never needed the machine behind him. He has never needed the headlines, the praise, or the artificially inflated expectations that follow other quarterbacks around like shadows. Because while others are built by hype, was built by hardship, by pressure, by the kind of adversity that doesn't trend on social media but carves a player into something unshakable. That's what makes him dangerous. That's why his rise feels inevitable. Every time analysts dismiss him, he sharpens. Every time someone questions his ceiling, he grows. Every time he hears another name labeled generational, he doesn't flinch, he works. And that quiet refusal to be rattled is what scares people, because it's not normal. Young quarterbacks often seek approval. They chase validation. They absorb the noise until it eats them, lets the noise swirl around him like wind around a mountain loud. Chaotic, but unable to move him. That stillness is not weakness. It's control. It's the calm of someone who knows exactly who he is, exactly what he's capable of, and exactly how dangerous he becomes when the lights burn brightest. And that scares people more than any highlight, any throw, or any stat sheet ever could, because they can't measure that. They can't chart poise, they can't quantify composure. They can't explain why a kid who should be overwhelmed by expectation carries himself like someone who's already survived the battles he hasn't even faced yet. They can't figure out why the pressure that crushes others only sharpens him, And so they dismiss what they don't understand. They hide behind scouting terms, recycled narratives, and surface-level critiques, hoping the language will cover up the simple truth they're too afraid to speak out loud. He's different. The kind of different that exposes the limits of their predictions. The kind of different that makes hype look small. The kind of different that doesn't need noise because the silence is louder, doesn't clap back. He doesn't respond to every ranking, every headline, every comparison that tries to place him beneath a system he never agreed to be part of. He just walks into the building, straps on his shoulder pads, and turns every doubt into another quiet act of violence on the field. And what makes it even more unsettling is that he looks calm while doing it. He plays like he's moving through a world he has already seen, like he's reading a script written years before anyone knew his name. When the pocket collapses, he doesn't panic, he adjusts.